the reality is like when we were growing up, comparison was not as in your face, and it might have happened in school. But today, teens carry the hallway in their pocket 24 hours a day. That's why this really matters.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of 5, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. What if the biggest influence on your teens' self-esteem isn't their friends, their teachers, or even you, but the hundreds of images and videos they scroll through every single day? Research consistently shows that appearance-focused social media use is associated with greater body dissatisfaction, lower self-esteem, symptoms of anxiety and depression, and disordered eating among adolescents. Girls tend to experience stronger pressures around thinness and beauty, while boys increasingly report pressure to be lean, muscular, and physically dominant. Importantly, it's not simply the amount of screen time that matters. It is how teens engage with social media. Constant comparison, seeking through validation, likes, and exposure to edited or idealized content are particularly linked to poorer mental health. At the same time, positive online communities and supportive relationships can strengthen resilience and belonging. The good news? Dads have more influence than they often realize. Today, we're talking about how fathers can help teens build confidence in a world that's constantly telling them that they're not enough. So as always, welcome. And you are watching and listening to Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. So as always, we'd like to answer your questions about fatherhood during our show. So please email your questions to podcast@dadcentral.ca. So another interesting topic today we've got on the board. We're talking about social media, body image, and mental health for teens on the Dad Central show. So Drew, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, as a dad, I have 3 teenage daughters. I have a 10-year-old son and, of course, my 3-year-old. And I just see a lot of this happening around me. And, some of it's really concerning. And some of it is you almost don't even know what to do. And some of it, you're like, you know what? I can't imagine what it's like for my kids to actually go through this because it wasn't like this when I was their age. So, yes, I think it's interesting topic, especially we know that teens are struggling, right? There's a lot of mental and emotional challenges just in general in the adolescence phase. So to add, what this social media era, it just seems pretty complex. So we'll try and make some sense of it today and give fathers at least one thing that I think they can do moving forward to really help, because we know that the relationship, a positive, strong, loving, supportive relationship, is a huge buffer against a lot of the stresses that this content produces in kids. So, yeah, hopefully we have something really valuable for dads. Your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, complex. When I think about this subject, I also think it's also mirrors the impact it has on many adults.
Exactly.
This is not just a teens or kids thing; it's just a general conversation. But of course, we're focusing on fathers and families on this, and it's not going away. In fact, it's just getting bigger and bigger. And we won't even talk about the world of AI. That's a whole other conversation topic. So let's give a little highlight on what we're going to put our focus on today. We're going to talk about why social media hits teens so hard. Also, the body image pressure facing boys and girls. What dads can do that actually helps. And then warning signs parents should notice. So Drew, let's start it off with our first conversation topic. Why social media hits teens so hard?
The starting point for me is I remember being, at this age, and it's hard because you don't really know who you are. And yet maybe you've had a strong upbringing, maybe you had challenges. Like I had a pretty challenging, traumatic experience, in my formative years. And adolescence is really a time where you're getting to know who you really are, and your identity is being shaped. And so a lot of the influences that our teens may be getting through these digital devices or social media may be sending messages that really don't align with who they truly are. And as parents, that's the gift that we have, is that we know our children intimately. The gifts, the talents, the skills, the abilities, the character traits that make them truly uniquely who they are, and wonderful people. But that can easily be distorted. And so I think the starting point for me is, why is this so crucial? Why social media hits hard is because they're getting bombarded with all these conflicting messages, and some of them are confusing, some of them are enticing, some of them are like, wow, I like, this is something that I just can't imagine. And they need a place to be able to filter and or make sense of all of these conflicting messages. So I think that's really the starting point. I mean, there's a couple other things. We all know that belonging is crucial, right? We need to feel like we're approved and we're liked and we're cared about. Most people, this idea of, our brain has a heightened sensitivity to being liked or being receiving approval. The idea that these social media algorithms are designed based on dopamine and the reward cycle is also challenging, because they're hardwired to actually captivate our brains. So I think that's really huge. And then, Ed, maybe you can talk about this idea of comparison. I mean, I always say comparison is simply a trap, right? When you start to compare yourself with others, it's a trap. But maybe you can add some more to that.
Yeah, this comparison thing is really dangerous. And again, you mentioned algorithms, and the sad thing is the algorithms are programming. It's like you're being programmed. And a number of teens and young people are not looking inwards into their identity and defining themselves. They're defining themselves through other images and other people, which I don't think is the best. It all starts with you, not with someone else. And it can be I'm sure many of us who are watching or listening to this have heard stories or seen stories in the media of young people doing things because they want to be like that person, or they saw this on a certain post, and they're losing their identity in regards to that. And the stories are always concerning, frustrating, and sometimes angry too. So we have to realize the comparison has become the constant, not the occasional, and it's not a good situation. And again, the difference between inspiration and comparison, it's a fine line. But unfortunately, in a lot of cases, social media has blurred that line, and it's now comparison, not inspiration.
Yeah.
So, it's a really challenging time. And again, it's not getting any easier.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned at the beginning that it's a challenge for adults. And the reality is that at a point in time, I had to delete all of the social media that I might have been following. Not that I've ever been a big social media one, but I had one called House, which is about essentially, house, homes, and the different types of homes, and style and design and those types of things. That was one of them that was sucking me in. And every time I'd look at that photo, I'd be like, oh man, look at that place. That's an amazing spot. And then I'd look at my house and be like, man, this doesn't even, like, it's like I became so dissatisfied just with my own house based on this house app. So I was like, I recognized how it was shaping my own brain and how negative I was about my own living space just because of all these images I saw. So I deleted it because I'm like, this isn't helping me. But teens typically don't probably have that level of self-awareness as well as they have that peer comparison. So the reality is like, when we were growing up, comparison was not as in your face, and it might have happened in school, right? You'd see a friend, they're wearing these new sneakers, the Patrick Ewings. I'm like, man, I want those. But that was once, right? But today, teens carry the hallway in their pocket 24 hours a day. And that is something that's why this really matters.
So true. So true. Let's move to our next segment, the body image pressure facing boys and girls.
Okay.
Start off, Drew.
Yeah, I'll go with the girls and you can talk about the boys.
Sure.
Simple, unrealistic beauty standards. I don't think this is that new, but I think it's enhanced even more now because it's shocking the content that anyone can access online around what is beautiful. There's these filters, edited images, but they're presented as not edited. Okay, this pressure to appear perfect is really challenging. My two 13-year-olds, it feels like overnight, have now become so focused on products, hair products, like all these, the number of bottles that I see in their rooms, and I'm like, what do all these things do? And the amount of time that they spend getting themselves ready. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with caring about your appearance in a positive way and taking care of yourself. Those are good traits. But sometimes I wonder about where's the line between this fixation and obsession with having to be a particular way. And I see some of the videos that they happen to consume around, these girls, how they get the perfect curl in their hair and how they have the different product they use. And so it's interesting, but there's so much, I'd say, pressure around how I look and appear, and it's so surface level. But girls, this is their world, and it's happening right in front of them. So definitely challenging.
For the boys, the pressure to be muscular and athletic, and that's always been around. I think Drew and I can agree that when we're still growing up, but especially in our younger days, and Drew has a fitness background, athletic background. I have not as much as him, but there was always the pressure, go to the weight room. I remember do your weights, work out, all that sort of stuff. The social media world has taken to a whole different level. And our boys are being pressured to be muscular. And now we have all these fitness influencers. And then discussions of steroids online. All these things that used to be in the hallway are now everywhere. On the phone, on the tablet, etc. And then we always talk about the area of masculinity and the expectations. It's really just put in their face, and there's no filters. Most of the platforms or messages are not filtered. They're just put out there without any thought about the potential impact on our young boys. So it's really, really challenging for boys. And I know a number of years ago, Drew and I went to an event about the social media impact on girls, but we were saying to the organization, what about boys? But that's a whole other conversation. Anything else you want to share on this part of the conversation, Drew?
Yeah, I find it interesting, how like these selfies of like your body make it out into the world, and it's just natural. Like you can walk down the street and you'll see people doing things. I'll be at the gym in the change room, and the people be like taking a selfie. I'm like, what are you doing with this photo? Like, I mean, maybe you're tracking and you're just doing your own, which is fine, right? So be it. But you see this stuff all online, and so I agree with you in that young boys or teen boys are inundated with the same types of images and ideas. And I think it's even worse, the masculinity messages, like these archetypes, like the manosphere, as it's been talked about. They're indoctrinating young teen boys with these ideas that are so counter to a true sense of identity, a true sense of what it means to be an honorable, caring man who respects and treats others with tremendous value. And I think that's the bigger danger here is, yes, the surface level, but the ideas that are being perpetuated by these influencers who are putting this type of content out there is I think really challenging for young men and boys who are growing up. And anyways, we'll talk more about that as the year progresses and as the national strategy for men and boys health hopefully gets released in the fall, and we can begin talking more about things like that. But I wanted to add that in there as well.
Good stuff. And we just want to, before we move on, say that many fathers recognize appearance pressures for daughters, but underestimate how strongly body images with boys can impact. So it's for both boys and girls. Next, let's get some solution. What dads can do that actually helps. Drew, I guess we'll go back and forth on this. You want to start?
Yeah, let's go. As always, a simple phrase, much more is caught than taught, is relevant here. So number one, we want to model healthy self-talk as well as a healthy self image when it comes to, how we show up in our day to day with our children. So when we catch ourselves criticizing our own appearance, saying things like, "Oh, I'm getting fat," that's not helping. In fact, we want to shift and focus on health, or choices, or things that are strengths. You can say, "Well, I'm choosing to exercise because I want to stay healthy, because our family matters to me, and I want to make sure I'm around a long time to be with all of you." So that would be a healthier choice. Model it first yourself, as opposed to getting caught into the shallow appearance metrics.
Next up, compliment more than appearance. So, appearance is one thing, but also add praise for things like effort, kindness, courage, creativity, integrity, persistence. Praise the whole, not just the appearance or physical, because teens need to understand they're more than what they look like in their physical appearance. We want to be holistic in their value, not just what they look like. Those are the things count as much, if not more, than their appearance. Drew?
Next, you want to teach media literacy, or essentially teach your children to audit the things that are coming in, that they're seeing in these images. And so this is really about critical thinking. You can sit down, or you can have just regular conversations and ask them questions like, "Well, who do you think benefits from this post? Do you believe this image was edited, or is it untouched? How realistic do you think this is? Or how does this account that you're going to regularly, how does it make you feel?" The more that we can help our kids begin to evaluate or think, even take some time to reflect, I think that will help them use their own intelligence and their own understanding and their own self-awareness to reduce these ideas of some of the unhealthy comparison, or just the automatic, "I see something, I have to go do it." If they have at least a moment to pause and reflect, that might help them think twice. So that's next.
All right. Well, next up, create offline confidence. And I like this one because many of our young people are trying to get confidence being online, but there's offline confidence. And what dads can do is encourage offline activities, such as, and whether young people feel capable, things like sports, music, volunteering. I love the volunteering aspect. It's really, really good for our young people and people of any age, but especially our young people. Outdoor adventures, building projects, part time jobs, because confidence grows through competence. So, again, taking that holistic approach in regards to getting our young people confident as a dad, help fester those things that are offline, not online. Drew?
Yeah, I'm going to add a quick story. Sophia volunteered at our church's youth camp, and she was placed in one area. Was feeling nervous because they came in and said, "Look, we've got enough people here. Would you come and move to this other?" It's an older group of campers. Long story short, that experience was almost transformational for her. Though, while she was nervous and scared, she actually got the experience to work with one particular camper, and she came home talking about it in a different way. And she was recognized for the way that she engaged with this one camper, and it became so powerful that it did exactly, it helped build her confidence, and it also helped her think about the future and her plans and what she was doing. She already wanted to be a teacher, but now she has a little bit more focus on the skills she brings. So I just couldn't reinforce, helping them build offline confidence is so powerful. Last one is keep the conversation open. So often we inadvertently, as dads, as parents, shut things down, when really our goal should always be to keep it open. And the number one way to do that is we have to manage ourselves. When we hear something, we almost always have that internal reaction. And sometimes my internal reaction comes my external response. And I'm like, shoot, I wish I could take that back. Because we often might blurt out things like, "Why are you always on your phone?" Or "What's this garbage you're looking at?" Or "This doesn't make any sense to me." All things I've probably said. So we want to instead shift, manage our own emotions, and simply say, maybe with curiosity, "Hey, what's showing up on your feed these days?" Or what's really grabbing your attention now? This idea of curiosity helps create conversation, whereas judgment almost always shuts it down. And I have to work on that. So I'm acknowledging it.
Excellent. So our final segment, warning signs parents should notice. Drew, any warning signs that our dads and parents should be looking out for?
So we've got a list here. I'll just go through them pretty quickly. I'll go through half and then you can do the next half. So the increased isolation. So when our teens are not really engaging and we're seeing them isolate themselves more and more, it's a sign. Obsessive mirror checking, a sign. Avoiding photos, a sign. Excessive exercising, definitely a sign. And I'm going to add one on here, and then I'll turn over to you, Ed. Often getting caught or choosing to take comfort through difficult emotions when you kind of turn to your screen as like your piece, or as like you literally can't put it down. I think that's a significant sign.
All right, and I'll take the second half. Extreme dieting, always a sign, always a sign. Constant appearance comparisons, anxiety after using social media, and the declining self-esteem. So these signs that Drew and I have just shared don't automatically mean a crisis, but they deserve compassionate attention. I want to say that again, compassionate attention. So that is a wrap for today's episode. What we're going to do is, I just want to give a little recap of what we talked about, why social media hits teens so hard. We then talked the body image pressure facing boys and girls, then what dads can do that actually helps. And then we close it off with warning signs parents should notice. So some takeaways. Let's remember, social media isn't the enemy. Comparison is in the challenge. Or comparison is the challenge. Sorry about that. Confidence grows through connection. Fathers remain one of the strongest protective influences in a teenager's life. So let's have a challenge for our dads. This week, spend 15 minutes asking your teen, what's something online that makes people your age feel pressured? That'd be an interesting question to ask the teens. Then just listen. No lectures, no fixing, just curiosity. You might learn more in one conversation than in months of worrying. And our final thought for today's show, your teen doesn't need a dad who understands every app. They need a dad who understands them. Every genuine conversation tells your child they're valued for who they are, not how they look. So as always, I want to say thanks, everybody, for taking the most important thing, your time, to hang out with us today. Drew has one more thing. Oh, yes, Drew. What's the word I'm looking for?
Resource?
Resource. There we go.
Yeah. It's another podcast episode that we had with Paul Davis from Social Networking Safety. He's been doing this a long time, doing it extremely well. So we'll put a link to that podcast in the show, and it was a fantastic episode, and he's got some great tips for parents that can go deeper on this topic.
All right. Well, thanks for filling my gap in there, Drew. I had a brain cramp. So as always, want to say thank you for taking the most important thing, your time, to hang out with us today. And we're speaking that there was at least 1 or 2 points that you can put into action. So as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll catch you soon. Be well and keep the faith.